All right. Here's a quick overview of our agenda. We will be introducing our topic. Then we will introduce our panelists. We'll have a panelist discussion, and then we will move on to a panelist question and answer portion. All right, so to get us started, we have the personal statement versus the statement of purpose, and what is the difference? So a statement of purpose is about what you want to accomplish during your time in graduate school. It will showcase your academic strengths and background, career goals, research interests, and fit with the program, including why you are choosing that specific program. Whereas a personal statement will describe more of who you are as a person. It'll highlight your personal motivations for applying to the program and any major accomplishments or challenges you may have had along the way. All right, and then here we have our panelists joining us today. I will let them introduce themselves. We have, well, first it should say experience with personal statements, not with funding, my bad. But our first person is Evan.
Hi, everyone. I'm Evan Palmer, and I am an associate professor in the Department of Psychology. I'm the graduate coordinator of the Research and Experimental Master's Program in the Department of Psychology. And I'm also a faculty member of the Human Factors and Ergonomics Master's Program out of Industrial Systems Engineering. Nice to meet you all.
Thank you. Next, we have Timothy.
Yes, hi everyone. I'm Timothy Nguyen. My pronouns are he, him, his. I believe there's a little bit of an error on here. I'm the online hybrid MSW advisor. So hello to everyone. And I'm also the program coordinator for our Masters of Social Work program. So thank you very much for being here. Look forward to answering your questions.
And now next we have Ryan.
Hi, I'm Ryan Skinnell. I'm the English associate professor in English. I'm also one of the writing program administrators and the TA coordinator in the English department. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm really excited to be here.
Awesome. Well, thank you all so much for joining us. And then my apologies, I had those switched out. All right, we will move on to our panelist questions. First is, I guess I went over it a little bit already, but if you all could, again, briefly touch on the difference between a personal statement and a statement of purpose.
May I go first?
Yeah, of course.
All right, thank you so much. All right, so what is the difference between a personal statement and a statement of purpose? Thank you so much, Fernando. You did a really good job with that slide.
Thank you.
So in my experience, some schools use those words interchangeably. Some will require both, while some will just require one of the two. And so as you're doing your research, you're looking at your programs, you want to make sure you know what the program is asking for. Okay, so without the exact prompts, in general, personal statements are, as Fernando pointed out, to showcase your personality, more of your statement about you, whereas the statement of purpose is more about the statement of your future. Like how would this program help you with your future goals? How are you suitable for this program? And again, I say that it's interchangeable because some personal statements will require that you answer those questions anyway. So again, it's more of a, when you do your research, you look up your schools, you want to keep track of what they're asking for in their prompts, okay? And so we'll go over prompts a little bit later because I believe we have a question about that. Okay. That's it for me. So thank you. Thank you.
I'd like to elaborate on that. I think it's a very good way to cover that, Tim. And I think personal statement is sort of backwards looking about where you came from, and a statement of purpose is more forward looking. And I think the part I would add is that if there is some problem with your record, so for instance, you had some lower grades than you wanted to during a period of your undergraduate study, or there was a gap in your academic record, the personal statement might be the place where you can offer an explanation as to what happened. So For instance, your grades may have been lower, but maybe you had to work 20 or 30 hours a week while you were an undergraduate, or there was a gap in your academic record, but you had to take some leave time to take care of a family member or something like this. So that is a place where you can try to provide an explanation for anything you might perceive as kind of a weak part of your application. And then the statement of purpose is more about what would you like to study in graduate school, who would you like to work with, and what training are you hoping to obtain?
So then the thing, I mean, Timothy and Evan already pretty much covered everything that I had to say. They stole all my good lines. But the one thing that I can add, I think, is that in addition to the sort of like, what do you want to do in the program, there's also an opportunity, particularly in the statement of purpose, to sort of project out a long future, right? So like, I'm getting into this program because I want to go on to a PhD program, or I'm getting into this program because there's a really good track record of getting people into industry jobs, or sort of, so thinking about not just what the program can give you, but what you can give the program, and then how you will be a credit to the program once you've completed it successfully.
Thank you all so much for sharing. Our next question is, how can I be sure I'm answering all parts of the prompt, and specifically what my department is requesting? Go ahead.
Okay, Timothy, yeah, you go first. You put your hand
Oh, no,
up.
you go ahead, Ryan. Thank you. I can wait. Thank you so much.
I was just going to say, when it will sound simple and maybe even ridiculous, but actually reading the prompt will be useful for this. And I said it will sound simple and ridiculous, but often the prompts that you get, or the invitations to apply, have a sort of cascading series of requests in them. And it can be really easy to get sort of trapped at the top and think, okay, I want to answer this question really carefully, and sort of miss the way that the cascading happens down below. And so I would recommend that you read it closely, and also that you read it with somebody else. We have, for example, the writing program here, I'm sorry, the writing center here. They work with a lot of students who are writing these kinds of things, and they read a lot of these prompts and requests for materials. And so it's perfectly wonderful and legitimate, and they would be very happy to have you come into the writing center with the prompt or the request for materials and say, here's what I think this means. I'd love to get a second set of eyes on it. And they do that, and they do that really well. So I would encourage you to do that.
Thank you so much, Ryan. And if I may add to that as well, I do want to also emphasize what Ryan was emphasizing, which was reading the instructions. And so some programs will have an FAQ listed on their website, or an information session, or pre-recorded videos going over these exact questions regarding the prompts. So for some programs like ours, we have all three. And so we try to front load that information on our webpage. Every year we have very, very common questions that can be answered right on our page. And our instructions on the prompts are, I would say, is pretty clear on what we're looking for. So we have a breakdown of 5 questions, and they can flow chronologically well if you just follow the prompt that we have. However, some people like to craft it in different ways, which is okay according to our program as well. But I know other programs have different requirements. Some are just more like, okay, submit any type of personal statement. There's not really too many prompts in there, and so it can be a little bit wider scope, whereas some programs really want to drill down the very specifics of these very particular experiences that we're looking for. And so for some programs like ours, I would say we are definitely not looking for generic statements, personal statements. We're looking for very specific answers according to our prompts. So yeah, that's my feedback. Thank you.
I think both Ryan and Timothy had great suggestions. my suggestion is a little bit more kind of a practical suggestion, which is you might want to actually copy the prompt and paste it into a document and look at each particular thing they're saying and craft an answer to each element of the prompt. And as part of this, you really want to be thoughtful and thorough, and that means that you need to take time and several drafts. These are not things you just dash off in an evening. This is an application that you should craft over time. So using your resources like the Writing Center, using your resources like the professors that might be writing letters for you, being very careful about reading the website because there's a lot of great information. And then finally, thinking about the prompt from the grad program's perspective. What are they wanting to understand about you to decide if you're a good fit for their program? So they're trying to evaluate, are you going to mesh with, the faculty we have and their specialties, with the culture we have going on at the program, and what they have to offer. So you want to make sure that you're answering all these things.
Thank you. Our next question is, what strategies should I use to structure my statement?
Yeah. All right, this is a good question too. And Evan touched base on part of this earlier, so thank you so much for that as well. The strategy that I used when I wrote my personal statement was that I gathered information from programs that I was most interested in. I created a tracking list, a spreadsheet of the most common questions, and then the ones that are the least common questions. And what I tried to do was answer all of those questions in one document, because then I would use that document to have that reviewed, revised, and so I would have all of the answers within that document. And then when it came time to apply, I would take pieces of that document. If you track it well enough, you won't have that many issues. If you track, let's say a program requires a minimum of 1,000 words, maximum of 1,000 words, then you can put that in your tracking list. You can track exactly which programs are asking what questions, and so you can pick and choose what portions you want to include on that statement. What else was there? Those were the strategies that I used. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Ryan. I think those are really good. And again, I would also emphasize using faculty as a way to have them evaluate your statements. Not only is it a really good idea to provide copies of your statements to your faculty so they can write you better letters of recommendation, but also they can give you really good feedback. They have that perspective where they've been reading applications, a bunch of them, so they can really look at how you're writing your statement and give you some good strategy about whether you're pitching it at the correct level or whatnot.
I'm in the humanities, and so we tend to be a little loosier-goosier about statements like this. And so often the way that I structure my statements of purpose or personal statements is structured around the stated goals or mission of the program that I'm applying to. So just, like right before this on a lark, I went to the Department of Chemistry's catalog descriptions for the MA and the MS here at San Jose State. And in the MA, they have very specific things. We're here to help you go into high school teaching. We're here to help you become a technical librarian, or people who are interested in teaching chemistry at the community colleges. That's the MA. So if I was applying for the MA, I would use that mission statement. I would use the description of their program to think about what are the things they want me to tell them I'm good at and I want. The MS, by contrast, says it's about people looking for greater competency in chemical research, maybe people who are thinking about a PhD, right? So I would have two very different statements if I was applying to the MA and the MS, because they're telling me right up front that their goals, their missions, their expectations are very different. And so I would be, my statements would be structured around their goals, their expectations, and how I do or don't align with them in ways that are useful for them to make that decision.
I'm actually hoping I can expand on Ryan's good point, which is, at least coming from my field, psychology, research and experimental psychology, and even clinical psychology, particularly PhD programs, it's more of a mentorship, apprenticeship kind of situation. You are applying to a PhD program to work with a particular researcher who does what you want to learn how to do. So when you're writing your statement, you're sort of writing it for that person, or maybe a couple of people. So you would be saying, I'm really interested in XYZ, well, knowing very well that there's a professor who studies XYZ. And so that person is going to see your statement and think, oh, this sounds like a great candidate to come into my lab. So instead of thinking about applying to programs, especially at the PhD level, you're really applying to work with particular people. And so structuring your statement to be appealing to those people that you want to work with, I think, is a good strategy.
Thank you all for that. Our next question is, how much time should I allocate for the writing process? I think that was a question I had when I first started, and I think I had taken like a few months to make sure that I was really, giving myself that ample time to write a good statement. So I'm wondering what you all think as well.
So I teach writing. That's one of the things that I teach for a living. And if I were teaching you to write this in class, in a one semester class, I would give you the assignment at the very beginning of the semester. And in part, the reason is that it's not just you involved in it, right? If you're trying to get letters of recommendation from professors and you want to get feedback from them on how to structure your letter, if you want to make sure that you're doing good reflection on what you've written and good alignment with the programs that you're aligning with, it's going to take, number one, a series of drafts, right? Where you try and get some things out, as Tim was saying, having different answers in a separate document that you can pull in, and then you got to figure out how they fit together. And you'll want somebody who can look at it and say, you need some different ideas, and you'll revise that. And you'll want somebody else who can look at it and say, you need to put the commas in the right place. And that, because it requires other people to participate in the process, can take in some cases months. And so you are much better off starting early and having to do a lot of revision than you are starting late and not having time to do any of that stuff. And part of it is that you will learn things about yourself in the process. And you want that. You want to be able to sort of record the things that you're learning about yourself as you're applying to go and work with new people.
I wanted to touch a little bit on something also that you mentioned, especially with ample time. In my experience, if you're having a program where you have a statement of purpose as well as letters of recommendation, some of your recommenders may ask to see your statement of purpose. I remember that was the case for myself. So I think that's a really good feedback for sure.
And if I may add to that as well, some recommenders, and thank you, Fernando and Ryan, very helpful information. Some recommenders also ask for a CV and a resume updated, so then they can draft their letter around that as well. Yes, and so I do agree with giving yourself a lot of time to draft, redraft, revise, review, and have others review your statement. And for me, it took a while, about 6 months or so, of constantly going to the writing center, setting up a appointment with them, and each draft gets a little better each time. And so I know that applications are coming up pretty soon, and so if you haven't been doing that, that's perfectly okay. You just have to invest a little bit more time up front. But it's one of those things where Once you do it, you can have it. If you don't get in this round, you can always use it for the next round. So I'd say spend some time on it, give it a lot of thought, and get feedback from people around you. I'm going to hold off on that because I know that that's going to be coming up again. So thank you.
I think Ryan and Timothy covered that wonderfully. One thing I would add is that I think one of the reasons, at least for me, to take so long writing these things, it's not that you're working on it every night. It's that you want to let it sit and get cold so that when you come back to it, so you work on it, on a Monday and you come back to it on a Saturday, it looks fresh to you and you can see it with fresh eyes. And so otherwise, you're not being very productive and you're just kind of repeating the same stuff. So I think one of the reasons we're encouraging you to space things out is so it has time to get cold between readings.
Thank you. I think that's a really good reminder aspect. We're not trying to have you work on it every single day for 6 months, but that's, yeah, I remember doing that, kind of working on it, taking a week, coming back to it, noticing some things that I may have missed. So thank you for that point. The next question is, from who should I seek feedback on my statement? I think we touched on that a little bit more, but if anyone would like to expand on that.
We've already said you want your professors to look at it. I have never met a professor who wasn't happy to do that with a student. They want you to be successful. They want you to have the best opportunity to talk about yourself and to go on to other successes. And so they're often very happy to do that with you. But you also want people who don't necessarily know anything about you or about your work or about the programs you're going into. Because often those people can look at it and say, I don't know what these words mean, and I need you to help me understand these words. Or in this part, you're talking about your childhood, and then all of a sudden you're talking about a trip you took with your grandma, and I don't understand how the two of those are connected. Or so you want people who can also look at it with sort of some distance from you and give you some insights for how somebody in a program who may never have met you and never heard of you will read your statement and could say, here's some places where you might make some better links or make some better connections or whatever.
I don't have much to add besides, your letter writers, your mentors, your peers, and then I might also suggest if there are graduate students that you know, they've recently been through the process, so they might be a good source of feedback as well.
Great feedback, Brian and Evan. I just have to add that you sometimes find that you can add strengths to your personal statement. When, as Ryan said, if you're looking to people who are outside of academia and you're looking at parents, family, siblings, they may contribute by saying, hey, did you think about adding this about yourself? Because I find this very strong about who you are. And I think that's missing in your personal statement. And so that's where that feedback comes in. It can add a lot of missing pieces that you may either accidentally leave out, or you just didn't think that was as much of a strength that should be highlighted. So use as many resources as you can. The more eyes on it, I'd say the better. You don't have to take everyone's opinion, but it's good to just have it. And it was helpful for me in doing so. Thanks.
Thank you.
Can I pick up on one thread of what Timothy just said real quickly? Getting feedback means that you will have to make some decisions about what feedback is useful for you and what feedback is not. So getting feedback is not, here's all the things you must do to be successful. It's, you've got a lot of different audiences from a lot of different perspectives saying, if I was reading this, here's how I would receive it. And so then, I mean, I know that it's challenging, but then you're at a point where you have to make some decisions about what you add, what you subtract, what you move around, what you revise. But I agree with Timothy, it's much better to have more input that you can make decisions out of than it is to have not any input and just sort of guessing.
Right. Our next question is, how do I tell my story while also articulating my career goals? So balancing of the story and future goals.
So my feeling is that, first of all, you can't tell your whole life story. Don't try. Just tell the parts of your story that relate to your career goals. So mostly what the reviewers want to know is, what is your motivation to go into the field that you want to study? There may be some personal connection with you that motivates you to do that. There may not be. You may just find it fascinating because you like it, and that's okay too. But I don't think we need to know everything about you. We really, no offense, we really just want to understand your motivations. If you think about it from the professor's perspective, if it's a master's program, it's 2 to 3 years. If it's a PhD program, it might be a 5 or 6 year relationship of mentorship. So we want to understand, why are you committed to doing this? Why do you really want to sign up for these long hours and low pay? If it's something you really like, it's the best gig in the world. And if it's something that you don't like, it's just not a good situation. So we really want to make sure you like it, you know why you're doing it, and you have very clear motivations for going into the field of study.
And thank you for that, Evan. If I may add, I found that if you're particularly interested in a certain major or department or degree, there's people in the field already who have gone to grad school, maybe to the school that you're applying to, and you can ask them to see how they wrote theirs, because then that one, they've made it in. That's not all that's decided on, but some people are willing to share their personal statements with others just to help people out. So there's a way to be a little bit resourceful. Also, sometimes groups work. Other people who are applying to grad programs, like what you found out on your research, what other statements online are really captivating and memorable. For me, when I read "Give Goth a Chance," that was a really good statement on diversity. Very, very good hook, very good ending paragraph that ties the whole thing back together. And so in telling your story, for certain programs, there's a, like let's say for ours, there's a part of it where it says, please tell us a little bit about yourself, why you want to become a social worker. And I think the mistake that some people make is that they spend more time on that one question than the other 4 prompts. And so then that becomes a little bit problematic, because then it's a lot of who you are and the things that you're going through, which is okay. But if it's too much of your personal statement, then it takes away from the other pieces that we're also looking at. And so that's just my 2 cents. Thank you.
So I'll also add a couple of cents. Evan talked about sort of like what your motivations and what your goals are. And there's also another part of sort of connecting your story to the statement of purpose is what things you have done or experienced that will translate into success in that program, right? So I didn't do so well on my grades as a first-year student because I was working 30 hours. But as a sophomore, I learned how to manage my time better, or I got a new job that aligned better with my academic goals. Or so being able to sort of connect your story to demonstrations of why you will succeed is a really good way, like why you're interested and why you'll be successful.
Thank you. All right. Our next question is, what do faculty look for when evaluating personal statements? I think we have touched a little bit on this question as well, but if anybody has anything additional to add, that'd be great.
All right. Okay, well, I'll just go. So I have a few things I look for in personal statements. One is evidence of grit, resilience, and motivation. Some context for why do you want to study what you're proposing. I'm interested in when you've had times that were challenging, these challenging circumstances, and how you overcame them. We're really interested to see, are you going to be a good graduate student? Grad school is hard, it's stressful, requires you to overcome challenges. And so if people have overcome challenges in the past, that's some evidence that they'll be able to overcome challenges in the future. Particularly if they've, as Ryan said in the last example, they identified a problem, they came up with a way to solve it, and there's evidence of growth there and a willingness to change and to take on what you need to take on. And also, I'm really looking at how well can you articulate yourself in writing. This is, a huge part of academia. Maybe Ryan and Timothy will agree. Once you actually get into it, it's just a lot of writing. It's really, that's the coin of the realm, is how many papers you can write. And you're also evaluating students' writing constantly. It's really a huge part of the job, no matter what field you're in. And so how well can you articulate yourself in writing? It's a writing sample. So it's going to tell me how well you can organize your thoughts into a logical flow, and you can support your arguments and all that good stuff.
Thank you, Ryan. Thank you. I'm just going to build on that. Yes, I agree, especially for certain majors like ours, writing is a huge, huge deal. And so that's exactly what we're looking for. How much effort did this person put into this statement in terms of fixing all the grammar issues? Are there, can we see their command of the English language in terms of writing it? Is it memorable, or is it kind of just a list of accomplishments, or is it blended in well with what we're looking for? Is this person prepared for research? Is this person prepared to make the sacrifices that are required for grad school? Our internship requirement is a lot for some people, and a lot of it's unpaid. And so if a person can show that they understand that before going into the program, that helps a lot too. And how much time did they invest in researching our degree and our program compared to others? That's really helpful, because then now I'm seeing, okay, this person looked at San Jose State, this person knows what we're offering. They've talked to someone, they've been to an information session, they've watched a recorded video. Like, you could tell that this person has information about our program. And so that makes me feel a little bit more reassured that you're preparing yourself for our grad program. So that's my 2 cents. Thank you.
So I'll say that notwithstanding how handsome and intelligent and just, shining beacons of humanity we may appear on the Zoom chat, we are people. And often when we read these things, what we're looking for is to be communicated with as if we are people. And so to sort of go along with what Timothy and Evan are already saying is, we want some sense that you are a person on the other end trying to communicate with us as people, and help us understand who you are and how, if you come and work with us, again, as Evan said, it could be 2 or 3 years if it's an MA, it could be 5 or 6, and in some cases even longer years. My PhD was, I think, a 7-year funded program. So if I'm investing 7 years in you, in your success, then I want to have a sense that you have invested some time and effort to understand who I am, what I do, what my program is about, what the things are that we're interested in, so that we begin to build a relationship. I mean, it's the beginning of an introduction to a relationship, not just the sort of high stakes, like you're up or down, you're good or bad. It begins to build a relationship. And I think that that's hard to remember when you're writing them, but it's one of the things that we look really closely at.
I'd like to tell a short story about that. I think emphasizes the things that we've been saying. In last year's admissions, I had a student who wanted to work with me And in her personal statement, her research statement, she had read one of my articles and she got it. And she talked about the article and she proposed a follow-up study. And it was something I hadn't thought about. And so, man, you better believe I was like, I want that one. You know, she's great. I really want to, you know, admit her. And now she's here and she works in my lab. So the fact that she had taken the time to kind of research each program, to think about the faculty, she was very thoughtful. She had read my articles. She had a connection. She had a suggestion. So I think that really shows that she had put in the work to understand the program and to understand the people that she wanted to work with. And that was really motivating for me in terms of trying to get her into the program.
That's a really good story. Wow. Really went that extra mile there. All right, I think our last question is just, are there any places on campus that can assist me in writing the personal statement? I know we plugged the Writing Center earlier. Does anyone know of anywhere else on campus?
I can't plug the Writing Center enough. They're seriously excellent. I was part of a faculty professional development group, and we were asked as part of that to go and actually have a session with the Writing Center to get a sense of what they do. And it was really helpful for me as a faculty. I mean, I published, you know, it's part of my career. I'm literally a professional writer. And still I sat down with Writing Center tutor and she walked me through several things that were really helpful. So I cannot say enough good things about them.
Thank you, Ryan. And also I put in the chat a link to a PDF, a guide for applying to graduate school through the Career Center. And so within that PDF, there's a linkable table in the top first page, and you can go ahead and just click on that, and it'll help you to navigate the systems that are in place for applying. And so if you go to the Career Center, SJSU Career Center website, there's more resources there. There's even external resources for grammar, punctuation, examples of other statements. And so we do have all that listed on there, and that's just our school. You can also go to other schools and take a look at what they have as well.
All right, thank you all so much for sharing. At this time, we will open up for those that are joining us. If you have any questions, please feel free to either unmute yourselves or use the chat function. And then while we are doing that also, we are recording and can also send you the slides of today's presentation. And if you're interested in receiving either or both, please feel free to leave your email in the chat box as well.
I have a question for Timothy and Evan. Have you looked back at your statements of purpose since you've gotten into graduate school? And do you have any thoughts about what you might do differently if you were to write it again at this point?
I have not. I think I'm old enough that there have been enough tectonic changes in computer technology. I don't even know if the version of Word I used to write it, you could open it, or even if I know where the file is. But I will say that in our first year seminar in our program, one of the things we do is we talk about concise writing, and we do some concise writing exercises. And then I have an assignment where I have all the students pull up their personal statement from their graduate school application, which of course they've spent hours and hours and hours crafting and revising. And they're always shocked at how much more concise they can make it, just by making their wording, less wordy, more active phrasing, and all these good things that you would learn at the Writing Center if you went and talked to them. But boy, I don't know, maybe kind of fun to find that file. I don't even know if I still have it.
It's a great question, Ryan. I don't remember the last time I read mine. I think I would still keep it though, because my ending on my personal statement was what I wanted to do in the future. And upon graduation, that was my first job out of grad school. And so I went with what I said I was going to do. So it would be harder for me to say, okay, I would change it. But again, I did invest a lot of upfront time with the Writing Center, as Evan said. So thank you. How about yourself, Ryan?
I was hoping you wouldn't ask me to answer my own question. I did. I actually shared it with one of my MA students who was applying to PhD programs recently. And I would have actually cut, mine is probably 2.5 pages single spaced. And I probably would have cut a significant amount of what I wrote about myself. There was a significant amount of sort of wind up to what I was really trying to say. And I think I had to write those things in order to get to the part where I was really addressing like how I belonged at that school, what I wanted to accomplish and what my sort of future goals were. But it took me, I probably spent 400 or 500 words on when I was born, it was a sunny day, you know, not quite that bad, but not that bad. So I probably would have cut a significant amount of it to sort of pare that back and amplify my connections to the school.
I'm gonna answer also, even though I wasn't asked. I went back and looked at mine, and I think I misspelled something or had like a grammar thing wrong, and I was so annoyed. And we had to look back at them because it was part of our portfolio overall defense. And I talked about how I was so annoyed at the fact that I spelled something wrong. And they're like, but you're here, you're like almost done. And I was like, I know, but it's just like, how did I miss that? Like I always click the check spelling, and I guess I missed it on the last round, but I thought that was pretty funny.
I'm basically of the opinion that if you've done a pretty good job of editing what you're doing, any program you'd really want to go to would not toss out your application because you have a typo or two. And anybody who would toss out your application because you have a single grammar mistake or a single typo, that's not really a place I would want to be. Maybe some of you would, but that's not a place I would want to be anyway. So, although those are the easy things to beat yourself up over, aren't they?
Yeah. Also, you know, no matter how well you prepare, your application is not going to be perfect, because otherwise you wouldn't have anything to learn in graduate school. So we know you're coming for more education. That's the point. Okay. So Brianna asks, there was a mention of how it would be good to talk about specific professors. Is that only for the PhD level? No, I mean, at least with regard to the research and experimental psychology program that I'm in, we ask you to name 3 professors that you would like to work with. And so we specifically ask you to say that, but I think it would be good. Don't just mention one, because they might be on sabbatical. They might have a full lab. They may not be able to take students. I would mention probably 2 or 3 that you professors you think that you're interested in their field of work. You'd like to more or less apprentice with them and learn their techniques and learn from them. And I think it's really good to do that, because what happens behind the scenes is that application will then get piped over to those professors. And if they're open and they're looking for graduate students to join their lab, and that's usually how it works, by the way, behind the scenes, coming into the application period, some labs are more full, some are less full, and you have some professors who say, I need 1 student this year, 2 students. You have a sense of how many students you want to admit. And then if you happen to say that you want to work with a professor and they happen to be looking for students, that's going to be a really, very increase your chances of getting into the program.
You can also reach out to those professors, give them time, do it respectfully, do it without, being demanding or whatever, but you can reach out and say, I'm really interested in the work that you do. I was wondering if you think you'll have room in your lab in fall 2022 or whatever. Or, I mean, we don't have labs in the English department, right? But are you taking on new students? Do you think that you'll be teaching certain classes? I noticed that in the past you've taught, I don't know, the history of rhetoric. Are you going to be teaching that again in the next couple of years? So again, it's a lot of it is establishing relationships with people that you want to work with. And professors love that stuff. We are just head over heels happy when students reach out and say, I'm interested in learning from you. Like, that's why we're here, dude. So, yeah.
Brianna, go ahead.
Okay, sorry. I just wanted to say more, and I thought it would be too much to put in the chat. So you're saying, I'm trying to understand. So if it doesn't if the prompt for the personal statement doesn't specifically ask for you to talk about professors that you want to work with, should you still mention it? Because I just want to make sure, that I'm covering all of the pieces of the prompt for the personal statement, and make sure I do my best. I'm sure like all of us want to do.
I would say it might depend on what field. So what field are you thinking of applying to, Brianna?
Speech language pathology.
Okay, so if they have a personal statement, if they had a statement of purpose, that would be where I would call out certain professor that I wanted to work, or a certain methodology I wanted to learn, or something like that. If they only ask for a personal statement, you might be able to do it at the very end, but it might also depend by program. So yeah, anybody else have thoughts on that?
That's all the more reason to reach out to professors you have now in the field and try and get a sense from them, because disciplines often can vary in really idiosyncratic ways. And so as people that you're asking to read your materials, you should have at least one or two in your field that you can say, is this right? Do I need to include these people? Would it be useful to mention people, or should I keep it at the level of methodology or theory or whatever it may be? And they will be able to answer that much more specifically than we will. But I think at least having a sense of who you would want to study alongside, what kinds of methods and theories you're interested in, so that you can say, I'm interested in these things. And when they read your proposal, they can say, well, that's great, because we do those things.
Thank you so much.
Oh, go ahead. If I just may just add there. So our program doesn't specifically add that prompt in there, but when I do see that in an application, it helps, because like, oh, this person did a little bit more research, finding out, what we offer, who's teaching, and what type of research opportunities that there are. So in that aspect, for me at least, that helps to show that you're at least looking a little bit deeper into our school. Thank you.
I'm going to be sharing our flyer for our remaining sessions, but if you do have any more questions, please feel free to use the chat function or mute yourself. But here is that flyer. Our next topic is this coming Friday: how do I find the right graduate program? Next week, we'll talk about why should I attend graduate school? And we will have a student and alumni panel. And then the week after, we will have a session on who should serve as my recommenders. We also offer information sessions and drop-in advising. Our next information session will be tomorrow, Thursday, November 4th, from 6 to 7 p.m. And then our last one will be Thursday, November 18th. Thank you so much for joining us, Evan. We also have drop-in advising in person Tuesdays and Thursdays, Tuesdays from 4 to 5:30 and Thursdays from 2 to 3:30 p.m. you would check in administration, building number 174, room number 174. And we do offer virtual sessions as well via Zoom on Wednesdays from 2 to 3:30 p.m. And if those times do not work for you, please feel free to email explore-gradstudies@sjsu.edu to set up an appointment. And those are sessions that I facilitate. So yeah, hopefully we can see you there. And we also have an evaluation for today's workshop. So if you could please utilize the QR code if you're able to do so, and we would appreciate your feedback. Oh, thank you, Ryan. Yeah, thank you, Daniel. All right, and then a reminder, we will be sending out the recording and the slides to you all when those are available. And I will also send out the flyer and linking to our website for those Zoom meetings as well.